I've been thinking a lot about how powerful a better, not perfect approach can be, and what happens when we adopt a mindset focused on swapping things, whether it's food, habits, routines, approaches, or even physical stuff, for something just a little bit better suited to whatever we're trying to achieve. Recently, I was chatting with a friend about certain areas of life where it can be challenging to feel like we're being forced to give up the things that we really love for the sake of our health, and that can create an awful lot of resistance to change. I hadn't been feeling that as much, and I told her about two things I do that really help avoid that feeling or experience of loss, or being kind of stuck in this mindset of giving things up. The first thing is befriending change. I was fortunate enough to be exposed to some really cool ideas very early on in my life, and I've always had a fascination with change and trying new things. Where a lot of people are very nervous about or resistant to change, I control and mitigate my fear of change by intentionally inviting it in. In certain areas and circumstances, I guarantee that change is a constant in my life, which means I'm always used to it. And as much as possible, I do feel like I'm in control because I've invited that change in. If I choose it, I'm more willing to make the change and usually feel less resentful of what I'm giving up as well. There are a few really great upsides to befriending change and inviting it into your life that I've been extra aware of lately. The first is you feel in control. You're acting, not reacting. The second is you can choose what kind of change. If you're in the driver's seat, you can decide how you want to go after a certain goal, and you can test out different options and see how they work for you. Number 3, you're expecting it, so you can plan appropriately. You don't get surprised by a change being forced on you, or at least having it feel like that. This is especially true when it comes to health stuff and with finances. Eventually, our past choices do catch up with us, and there are consequences. Then we're forced to make changes, and usually at that point in more extreme ways than would have been necessary if we'd been proactive about it. Number 4, you can invite others to join you and make it an inclusive process instead of potentially alienating. Sometimes we avoid change because we're worried about what it'll do to the relationships we have with others in our lives. Lots of times, friendships and family relationships are intricately wound up in our habits and routines and rituals, and when we change, it impacts more than just ourselves. If we invite others to be part of the changes we're making, it not only gives them the opportunity to be part of what we're focusing on, it also makes it more likely that they'll support our efforts instead of sabotaging them, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And number 5, it keeps your life interesting. We actually thrive on surprise and novelty. When we get this in lots of little ways, it keeps us interested and engaged with our lives, and we're less likely to seek out dopamine-rich activities that can have negative consequences. And we're less likely to resort to numbing activities like food and booze and endless hours of gaming. Which all sounds great, right? But how do we actually do that? Well, adopting an experimental mindset is critical to this approach to befriending change, as it takes some of the pressure off. You're not necessarily expecting a specific result to come from the change you made. You're just trying something new and seeing what happens. And all the little changes you're making are adding up to something down the line. The second trick is using the language of swapping, instead of giving up or quitting or banishing. It's really helpful to making those little changes without giving up the routine, ritual, or habit. You're just swapping some little element for a slightly better alternative, so the positive change is built right in. Now, that may be seeming a little bit abstract, so let's run through a few practice examples that are all things I've experimented with in my own life in the last while. If your toast with jam is your source of happiness in the morning, could you swap your jam for a lower sugar version? Or boost the protein content of your bread? Or add some kind of nut butter to help prevent a blood sugar and corresponding insulin spike and support your metabolic health at the same time? Maybe you could do all of those things. If you love your granola in the morning, could you swap it for a lower sugar, higher protein version that would help give you a more stable base for the day? Or could you swap your store-bought granola for a homemade batch of granola and save some money and reduce some packaging at the same time? What if you have a ritual of Wednesday chats for tea with your friend, and you switch to a black tea or green tea at your favorite coffee shop instead of a mocha if less sugar is your goal? Or take turns hosting tea at your house so it's pennies instead of dollars if the goal of your swap is to save some money? Could you each make your own tea while you chat on FaceTime so you skip the driving across town in dicey winter weather without giving up your precious friend time? Could you switch your sitting visit for a walking visit while you catch up, or attend a Zoom meeting, or listen to a podcast, or listen to a course module, and add to your total movement minutes for the day or the week? If you've been impulse buying little things online to reward yourself, could you try just swapping out hitting the purchase button for an add to wish list button that you review your list at the end of the month and then choose the item that's calling to you the most and fits the amount of funds you actually have available to you after all your bills are paid? Making these little swaps might not seem like a big deal at all, but the benefits do add up long term and can have a really big impact on your health, your finances, your quality of life, and your overall well-being. So as you go about your next 7 days, I'm inviting you to join me in the Swap It Up experiment. Think about what opportunities are available to you to challenge the status quo and make just one little swap towards a better future for yourself. I bet you'll be surprised at just how many you find. Thanks for listening to Go Think About with Crystal Hunt, the podcast where we keep it real, keep it human, and keep it honest. Before you take off, please remember to hit the follow or subscribe button in whatever app you're listening to the show. It'll help you stay on top of when those new weekly episodes are released, and it'll help me stay motivated to keep on creating, knowing that you are out there listening. I'll be back next week, but until then, you know what to go think about. I'll be here cheering you on while you look for interesting ways to swap it up in your own life.